What's up, everybody? This is Tommy of Titan from the Side Scheme Podcast, mimicking my co-host Banana Crapshoot with my first ever attempt at a vlog. So here we go. Today we're just going to go over some random thoughts I've been having about allies and how I classify them in my own head. And kind of in light with some of the new spoilers we've been seeing from that of the Dexcelsior podcast, the She-Hulk spoiler that they had, and then we at the Side Scheme also have a spoiler of Sentry, which is another aggression ally. And basically, when I think about allies, I think of them in two ways. I think about an ally that you play on the table, you get an instantaneous effect, you trigger maybe a thwart or an attack, or you exhaust them for some other purpose, and then the very next opportunity you get, you're using them as a blocker. So they're done. They soak that damage, and you've gotten great value from hopefully a 2 to 3 cost ally. And some fall in the middle of these two categories, but we'll recap and go over that a little later. The other camp of allies that I'm going to have, is for the purposes of this vlog, are the bigger, beefier allies that kind of stick on the table and that you want to keep there. The kind of allies that you would invest healing in, that you would invest things like Inspired, placing upgrades on them, just different things. Basically an ally that you want to play for the longevity of the game, and maybe you would think about using med team or first aid to keep around a little longer. And those are allies that you see, like Vision, like this new She-Hulk that we've seen, like the Sentry that we've now seen. Nova is a good example of that. Someone that has a longer lasting effect, not that instant gratification of play an ally, get something from it, block with them. And for the purpose of this vlog, I'm going to classify them as Champs, which are the ones that you want to keep on the table, and Chumps, the ones that are going to chump block for you. So, and cost isn't always indicative of that, because you could have an ally like Nick Fury, for instance, who's a 4-cost ally. Now granted, quite often you're going to get a 3-card rebate on Nick Fury, but he's a great example of someone that comes in, you get instant gratification from them, you attack or thwart, they're blocking, they're gone. And I think those allies are the Chumps, as I'm calling them. I think are very, very prominent in the game right now as far as allies are used. I think that that's one of the best uses of an ally, is that block. And you can always have that moment where you're in trouble and you have an ally that was intended to be one of those champion class allies that you then have to, use them in the emergency case of a block where you or your teammate is about to get KO'd. And obviously there's going to be gray in between. Some of the allies that come to mind as a gray ally would be like a Mockingbird. You play her, she stuns them. Well, if she stuns them, there's less of a chance that you're going to have to block with her, unless it's a multiplayer game, and then you can use her to basically cancel 2 attacks, where she gets a stun and she blocks, as well as that 1 thwart or 1 attack, depending on what the situation calls for. So she kind of falls more in the class of a chump for me. Not in the true champ status, even though sometimes in a solo game she'll linger for a round or 2 outside of that initial play and effect. But that's just kind of where I'm at right now, and I think that we're seeing a trend in the game where we're going to start to increase the number of champ allies, or at least that's the way it seems like it's going with the new Iron Man that's already available in the EU and I believe in Australia at this point. And then there's the new Sentry, the new She-Hulk, which we talked about. These allies are considered traps by a lot of players because they require a certain amount of investment outside of just their cost. So quite often you're paying 4, 5 in the case of Heimdall for one of these giant allies with these increased stats, with these increased health pools. She-Hulk in particular is one that people have talked about. In a 4-player game, everybody's throwing Honorary Avenger on She-Hulk so that her health total is 15 or whatever it is, so that she can swing in for some massive attacks at some points throughout the game. Now that does seem like a trap to me, because there's always going to be that chance that the game is close and you're going to need that ally as a blocker, or something's going to come out that's going to deal indirect damage, it's going to force you to put it there, or there's going to be, like in the Wrecking Crew scenario, something that harms allies or deals splash damage to them. So that does seem like a trap when you're investing that many cards in one ally, and I completely understand that. And Vision can be a trap. Nova can be a trap because of that ongoing recursion of having to invest every single turn with that individual energy resource to get that maximum value from that ally. And that is definitely a trap, but that's something that you can build your deck around, and you can be aware, and you have to make the judgment calls of when it's best to use those abilities and when it's not. In the case of leadership, a lot of times it's easier to get return on your value in the case of Vision, or the case of Iron Man, or the case of just the Inspired upgrade for allies in general, because you get to invest these cards in them, and then you'll get to occasionally double dip, and you can use a Get Ready to use them again. You could use things like Teamwork to retrieve that bonus, and while Teamwork isn't in itself particularly efficient, it combos very nicely with cards like Wonder Man, again Inspired, or even Enraged on a Wonder Man. I've tried things where I've played Wonder Man and with an aggression player had them playing Enraged on him, and then he's just basically sitting there being my Teamwork battery, where I won't attack with him because I don't want him to take the consequential damage. I don't want him to have to discard a card from my hand for that attack. So he'll literally just be there for Teamwork, and when I need him, he's +5, maybe +6 attack to my hero. And if I can capitalize on that 3 to 4 times a game, I feel like that's a valid investment of the 3 to 4 resources that you're investing in him. And then in addition, obviously, the card of playing Teamwork, and you have to get to that card over and over and over again. So he's kind of in a gray area too, Wonder Man, and that's kind of a tangent. But I in some decks I would classify him as a champion type ally, a champ, if you will, as opposed to a chump. But I'm curious to see what allies you guys enjoy, what allies you guys like, what allies you would argue are traps, what allies you would say fall into the champ, what allies would fall into the chump. Some others that come to mind for me are Squirrel Girl as one of the chumps. Maria Hill is the chump of chumps. You want to play her as frequently as possible, continuously getting that ping damage across the whole board. So those are some ones that come to mind. The Hulk is a cheap one that's probably in the champ category quite often, although at a 2 cost, I'd include him in decks even when I'm not planning on attacking with him, just as a blocker, because 2 to basically stun or give yourself a tough status is reasonable. Certainly better than invulnerability. But that's where I'm at with my allies and how I see them playing out. And some of the more powerful allies in the game aren't always the best allies, the most efficient allies to play, just when they're tagged with that big cost. In the case of Sentry, he's got the 4 cost tag, but in addition to that, you have to receive an encounter card. That's a pretty steep price. But, you know, with a 3 attack and a 2 thwart, 1 consequential damage for either, and the fact that he has 5 life, if you can keep him on the table for the duration of his 5 life and get 4 attack or thwarts out of him, and then that last chump block, or heal him and beyond, I mean, that's some significant value that you've gotten for your 4 and the downside of the encounter card. The big thing with him is I think it's going to depend on the game state and where you're at with that, if you want to take that encounter card at any particular point in time. But that basically wraps up what I wanted to say. I just wanted to get some thoughts out there about allies in general. Maybe hear some of your thoughts back. Let us know if you guys want more videos like this, or if this is a waste of our time. That's all. Thanks. Bye.